Blue and red lights painted the lake like broken candy canes. The night was quiet except for the soft splash of water against my dock and the chirp of crickets hiding in the reeds. Then a police cruiser rolled to a stop at the end of my gravel driveway, and the quiet broke. "That's him." Karen pointed so hard I thought her elbow might pop. Her voice carried over the water and into my bones. "Officer, remove this man from my community home. He's refused to leave after the HOA voted. He's trespassing." I stood on the dock with my hands open, palms calm, trying to keep my breathing slow. The moon sat like a bright coin above the pine trees. Lights clicked on in nearby houses. People stepped onto porches in their pajamas. Lake Silver Pine was the kind of place where everyone came out when a dog barked or when a kid found a turtle. Tonight they came out for the flashing lights and Karen's voice. The officer, a tall man with a neat beard and a neat hat named Officer Brooks, shined his flashlight toward me. His face was careful, the way people look when they step on a frozen puddle and hope it holds. "Sir," he called. "I need you to come up from the dock and talk to me." Beside him, Karen stood with her phone up like she was making a movie. A second car door shut. Another officer, a woman with a tight ponytail, Officer Hale, walked toward my mailbox. She read the numbers. 117 Cedar Bend. She looked down the drive at the small cedar cabin I'd spent all spring fixing. New porch swing, fresh paint the color of oatmeal, a flag flapping softly above the steps. "Move out!" Karen shouted, as if the words were a spell. "You heard our vote. You're violating community rules. Boats, fences, paint color, and occupancy. You people think rules don't apply to you." She flicked her eyes at my daughter's bedroom window, where a nightlight glowed like a tiny sun. "And I know what you're doing with that dock. It's HOA property. You don't even belong on it." I walked the dock slowly, feeling the old boards under my feet. My dog, Baxter, a golden mutt with one floppy ear, paced beside me with his tail low. I touched his head the way you pat the arm of a worried friend. "Sir?" Officer Brooks said again, gentle but firm. His hand rested near his belt. "Not on it. Near it. We got a call about a disturbance and a possible trespass. We need to sort this out." I stepped onto the gravel. My heart thumped like someone knocking from the inside. "Happy to talk," I said. "But I'm not moving out of my own house." Karen's laugh was sharp. "Your house is not your house if the HOA says you violated rules and lost your privileges. That dock, community space. The easement, community space. Your boat, wrong color. Your mailbox, too tall. The ivy, invasive. We gave warnings. We gave fines. You ignored all of it." Neighbors gathered at their mailboxes and along the bend of the road, shadows with faces I knew. Mr. Jenkins, who always wore socks with sandals. Nora from the yellow house hugging her robe. Mike and Sarah from the ranch-style house with the porch frogs. They whispered, they watched. Officer Hale scribbled in a small notebook. "Ma'am," she said to Karen, "you said he refused to leave. Do you have any paperwork for an eviction? A court order?" Karen lifted a stack of printed pages and shook them. "HOA minutes, violation photos, a vote sheet, and I have the covenants. He knows what he did." Brooks looked at me. "Do you have ID, sir?" "In my pocket," I said, and stayed very still while he watched me take it out. He checked the card, checked the mailbox number again, looked down the drive at my home, then at the dock, then back to Karen. "Let's talk up there," he said, pointing toward the gravel near the mailbox, out of the triangle of flashing lights, away from the edge of the water. I walked closer. Karen stepped even closer like she thought she could push me back into the lake with her eyes. "Don't you dare set foot on that community path again," she hissed. "You lost that right." "Ma'am," Officer Hale warned softly. I kept my voice even. "Officer, I bought this place in April. I pay my mortgage. I pay my taxes. I followed the rules, I understand. I also—" Karen cut me off. "He built that dock without approval, and he added a second mailbox for who knows who. He's sneaking in occupants. We're a single-family community. The HOA decided his renovation is a nuisance. He's out." Officer Brooks lifted a hand. "Let's slow down. Sir, do you have any proof that this is your dock and that you're allowed to be here?" My mouth went dry. That word, proof, was a thin bridge over a deep river. I knew what I had in the kitchen drawer: a survey map, a deed, and a letter my lawyer had sent to the HOA board chair 2 weeks ago. I also knew Karen had ignored every email and reply. I had not wanted this to be a fight in the dark with lights and neighbors in fear. "Officer," I said, choosing each word like it might crack if I pushed too hard. "I can get you documents, but I also need to point out something right now that might change what we're talking about." He frowned, curious. "What's that?" "Where we're standing," I said. "The gravel, the mailbox, the narrow strip of land between my drive and the lake path, the place where Karen had marched the officers like a parade leader. This exact spot. Karen rolled her eyes like I'd told a bad joke. What about it? I took a breath. The stars above us were gentle and patient, but I could feel the moment snapping like a twig underfoot. Officer, I said, before I say another word, I need you to tell me where you think the property line is. He tipped his head, eyes following the beam of his flashlight along the ground. I can't know that without a survey, he admitted. Then you might want to see what's under your feet, I said. And the lake went very quiet. Even the crickets, it seemed, held their voices. I crouched and brushed aside a veil of pine straw, revealing a small metal disc sunk into the soil. It glinted like a penny in the beam. Karen's mouth opened, then shut. Officer Brooks leaned in, lips pressed tight. Is that? He began. A survey pin, I said. Karen's grip on her stack of papers tightened until the pages bent. You planted that, she snapped. He planted that, he's tricky. Ma'am, Officer Hale said again, and this time it had a warning in it, like a tug on a leash. I stood slowly. Officer, I will happily show you the rest of the pins. I'll get the map from my kitchen. But before I do that, I need you to hear me. I am not trespassing, and I did not refuse any legal eviction because none exists. I'm asking you to help us slow down before someone makes a big mistake we can't pull back from. The second cruiser door opened. A third figure stepped into the light. Sergeant DeMarco, a broad man with kind eyes, the sort of person who looks like he could carry a piano alone but chooses to ask for help anyway. He took in the scene in one long look. Me, the doc, Karen with her papers, the pin shining at our feet, my neighbors watching from the shadows. What do we have? He asked. HOA dispute, Brooks said, straightening a little. Possible trespass. Property line might be complicated. DeMarco nodded, rubbed his chin, then looked at me. You said you have documents? Yes, sir. Go get them, he said. Officer Hale will go with you. No sudden moves. We all keep calm. Ma'am, he added to Karen, you stay right here. Karen lifted her chin. I don't take orders from... You do, he said, simple as closing a book. Tonight you do. For a second, something like a tremor flashed across her face. Then she swallowed it and tried to smile at the neighbors as if this was a party she was hosting. I turned toward the porch, Hale at my side. Baxter trotted beside us, tail unsure. The night pulsed with that strange quiet when a storm is coming but hasn't reached you yet. On the porch, a moth danced against the light. I opened the door and felt the warm air of home push against the cool night. Your daughter home? Officer Hale asked softly. Sleeping, I said. She's 8. Her name is Lily. Hale nodded. We'll keep it calm. I pulled the drawer by the sink and took out the envelope. Inside were the pieces of my side of the story, the deed with my name, the survey with tight black lines marking the old lake lot that had been drawn before anyone had invented golf carts or HOA newsletters, and the letter my lawyer had sent that explained the dock had been here since the 1970s and was listed as an appurtenance to the parcel. A big word that simply meant, it comes with. We stepped back onto the porch. I could see Sergeant DeMarco talking to Karen. She was waving toward the lake path and the small gate she'd put there 2 weeks ago, a gate that said HOA members only. She'd snapped a lock on it herself. She had smiled the whole time. When we reached them, I handed the envelope to DeMarco. He took the papers, read by flashlight, brows pulling in. Huh, he said. Karen bounced on her heels. What does it say? She demanded. It says, DeMarco answered slowly, that some of this might not be what you think it is. Karen's smile flickered. No. We voted. We have rules. What we say goes. DeMarco met her eyes with a look I've seen only on people who have cleaned up after storms. Ma'am, not if it breaks the law. A murmur moved through the neighbors like wind through brush. Karen's face flushed. Her fingers trembled, but the rest of her stood stiff, like a flagpole in a gust. I felt my chest loosen just a little, like someone had taken one stone off a pile stacked on my heart, but only one. Because I knew this wasn't over. I knew, too, that winning is not the same as healing, and rules are not the same as kindness, and that even true maps can be used to hurt people. Here's what we're going to do, DeMarco said, folding the papers carefully. Officer Brooks will document the call. Officer Hale will take photos of the pins. I'm going to call the on-call county clerk for property boundary confirmation. And we're going to keep this peaceful. Karen lifted her phone again. I'm live, she announced to no one and everyone. The community has a right to know. We will not be intimidated. We will not. A child's voice drifted from the shadows. Mom, what's happening? A small boy in footy pajamas stood at the edge of a porch 2 houses down, holding a stuffed dinosaur by the tail. His mother scooped him up and whispered, "It's okay, baby. Go back inside." The little boy looked at me with big eyes. I raised a hand and waved gently. He tucked his face into his mom's shoulder. Something inside me twinged. I thought of Lily sleeping with her braid on the pillow, her library book open beside her, a page corner folded like a little tent. I thought of how fear blares and kindness whispers, and how loud things can make us forget the soft things we need most. "Sir," Officer Brooks said, "until we confirm all this, we're asking everyone to stay off the lake path and the dock. That includes you." I nodded. "That's fair." Karen's mouth twisted. "See? He knows he's wrong." "I said it's fair while we confirm," I answered, keeping my voice even. "That's not the same thing, ma'am." Her eyes narrowed. "Don't patronize me." "Ma'am," DeMarco said, "that's enough." For a moment we stood in a strange stillness, like the space between a breath in and a breath out. Crickets picked up their song again. The stars looked on. Somewhere across the lake a dog barked twice and then stopped. The world, even in drama, kept turning. "Officer," I said softly, "can I say one thing?" DeMarco tipped his head. "I moved here because this lake made me feel small in a good way," I said. "Like the water could rinse off the hard days. I want to be a good neighbor." I helped Mr. Jenkins fix his mower. I repaired the little free library box so kids could borrow books without the door falling off. I'll follow real rules. I just won't follow rules someone made up to push me out because they don't like me painting my porch a color named Old Oatmeal. Mike chuckled in the shadows. Even DeMarco smirked. Karen did not. "Noted," DeMarco said. "Kindness counts. So do boundaries." He handed my papers back. I slid them into the envelope, and for the first time that night I let myself breathe all the way out. Baxter leaned against my leg, his warm weight steady, his floppy ear tilted like he was listening for the ending to a story still being told. "All right," DeMarco said to the group. "Everyone go inside. We'll file the report. We'll follow up with the county. No more yelling. No more—" A sudden metallic snap cracked through the night. Every head turned. Down by the little gate on the lake path, the new lock Karen had installed dangled open, sliced clean. The gate swung forward and banged the fence post. A figure in a hoodie stood frozen by the path, bolt cutters hanging from one hand, the other hand held up like "don't shoot." His face was as shocked as ours. "Hey!" Karen shrieked, voice pitching high. "Vandal, that's HOA property!" The figure bolted along the path toward the water, feet slapping dirt. DeMarco barked, "Stop!" Brooks moved toward the path. Hale flicked on her brighter flashlight. Baxter barked, lunging to the end of his leash. The neighbors gasped. The runner's hood fell back, and I saw a familiar jawline and a flash of fear. My stomach flipped. It was the last person anyone expected to be cutting a lock in the dark on Lake Silver Pine. "Hands up!" DeMarco shouted, sprinting. The runner skidded to a stop at the edge of the dock and threw both hands into the air, bolt cutters clanging to the boards. The dock creaked. Water slapped the posts. The whole night leaned forward, breath held. And before anyone could move, there was a splintering sound, a shout, and a sharp cracking pop, like the lake itself had decided to speak. Everything went sideways at once. "Where are you watching from?" The bolt cutters clanged to the dock, and the hood slipped from the runner's head. Gasps rippled through the gathered crowd like stones skipping across water. Under the bright glare of Hale's flashlight, the face that stared back at us wasn't a stranger. It wasn't a vandal or some reckless teen looking for trouble. It was Tyler, Karen's own nephew. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. The lake wind carried the smell of pine and damp earth, and all of us stood frozen in the tension. "Tyler?" Karen's voice cracked like glass. What are you doing here?" He looked pale, his eyes darting from the bolt cutters to his aunt, then to the officers. His chest heaved like he'd been running for hours. I was trying to fix it," he stammered. "The lock. It jammed." "Fix it?" Sergeant DeMarco barked. His voice carried authority, the kind that filled the night air. "You sliced it wide open." He gestured at the still swinging gate. Karen rushed forward, her stack of papers forgotten in the dirt. She tried to put herself between the officers and her nephew. "He's just a boy. He doesn't know better. Leave him alone." "He's 17, Hale said sharply. "Old enough to know bolt cutters don't fix locks." The neighbors began whispering louder, no longer hiding their curiosity. Mr. Jenkins muttered something about family privilege. Nora shook her head and hugged her robe tighter. Sarah, holding her husband's arm, whispered, "Unbelievable." I felt my stomach tighten. This wasn't just about a lock anymore. This was about credibility. Karen had stormed onto my property accusing me of trespassing, waving HOA rules like weapons. And here was her own blood, caught red-handed breaking the very lock she'd installed to keep me out. Tyler's voice cracked as he pleaded, "I didn't mean any harm. I just..." He stopped, swallowing hard. What? DeMarco pressed. You just what? Karen tried to cover for him. He was trying to protect me. That man, she pointed at me again, her voice desperate now, is dangerous. He threatened our community. Tyler was scared. He was only trying to make sure the gate was safe. Brooks raised his brow. Ma'am, you called us claiming your neighbor was trespassing. Yet your nephew was caught destroying property. You see how that looks? Karen's face flushed deep red. Don't you twist this. He's a child. Meanwhile, that man... But she didn't finish because DeMarco stepped forward, his hand up. His tone left no room for argument. Enough. No more pointing fingers until we sort the facts. He looked at Tyler again. Son, put your hands behind your head. Karen gasped. No, you can't arrest him. He's not under arrest, DeMarco replied firmly, but we're detaining him until we get the story straight. The sight of the young man trembling under the officer's command made the night heavier. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But then I remembered the fear in Lily's voice when Karen shouted earlier, and the way my own chest had tightened when the cops first pulled in. This wasn't a game. As Brooks cuffed Tyler loosely, Karen screamed, "This is harassment! This whole neighborhood will hear about this!" That's enough, ma'am, DeMarco said again. His voice was steady, calm, the kind that could douse a fire. Karen's eyes burned into me. You did this, she spat. You brought the police to my doorstep. You've poisoned this community. I held her gaze, my jaw tight. No, Karen. I didn't bring them. You did when you lied about me trespassing. The neighbors murmured louder now, some nodding, some whispering in disapproval. The tide was turning, and Karen knew it. But before anyone could speak again, the night exploded with another sharp noise. A loud crack echoed across the lake, wood splintering. Everyone turned toward the dock. The board beneath the bolt cutters had split, sagging dangerously over the water. The cutters slid, clanged once more, then disappeared into the dark ripples below. The sound was like the lake swallowing evidence whole. The dock groaned, and Tyler, still in cuffs, stumbled back with wide eyes. The officers lunged forward, pulling him to safety as the broken plank sagged lower. Baxter barked madly, tugging against his leash. My chest tightened again, adrenaline flooding my veins. If they hadn't grabbed Tyler in time, he would have fallen straight into the black water. The neighbors gasped and pulled their children closer. The air was thick with shock, and then came the silence, the heavy, uncomfortable kind that made every heartbeat echo louder. DeMarco exhaled slowly, his jaw set. This just turned into something bigger. Karen rushed forward, tears streaming now. See what you've done? My nephew could have died. Her words stabbed at me, but they didn't make sense. If anything, it was her lock and his bolt cutters that had set all this in motion. I wanted to say something, but my throat was dry. My hands clenched at my sides. Because deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. The real storm hadn't hit yet. The dock creaked in the quiet, like an old man sighing after carrying too much weight. Everyone stood frozen, eyes on the splintered board that had nearly sent Tyler into the dark water. The lake reflected the flashing lights from the cruisers, rippling red and blue across its surface like broken glass. Karen was sobbing now, holding her nephew's arm as if she could shield him from the world. This is exactly what I warned about, she shrieked. That dock is a danger to everyone, it's falling apart, and this man refuses to listen to our rules. I clenched my jaw. My dock wasn't perfect. It was old, yes, but I had worked tirelessly to repair it. Fresh nails, replaced planks, sealed wood. The board that gave way tonight had been part of the original structure that I hadn't gotten around to replacing yet. I'd planned to finish the repairs before summer ended when Lily and I could afford to slow down. But before I could speak, Officer Hale stepped in. Her voice was calm, but firm. Ma'am, your nephew almost fell because he was tampering with a lock, not because of this man's repairs. Don't twist the story. The neighbors whispered again. Some crossed their arms, eyes narrowing at Karen. For the first time, I saw doubt ripple through the crowd. Doubt about her leadership, her control, her version of events. Sergeant DeMarco, still steady as stone, took a step forward. Let's reset. We have 3 issues tonight. The trespassing claim, the lock tampering, and now the dock's condition, one at a time. Karen wiped her eyes dramatically. The first issue is the most important. This man doesn't belong here. He's endangering us all. He won't follow the HOA. DeMarco turned his head toward me. Sir, do you want to explain your side? I nodded, gripping the envelope of documents like a lifeline. I bought this property legally in April. I have the deed, the survey, and the county's approval of my dock as an appurtenance to the parcel. That means it comes with the property. Karen's been trying to push me out ever since I moved in because she doesn't like my paint color, my mailbox, or that I let my daughter plant wildflowers in the yard. None of those things are against the law. The neighbors shifted. Nora spoke up quietly, but her voice carried in the stillness. I saw Lily out there planting those flowers. They're beautiful. They make the path brighter. Karen spun toward her. Nora, don't encourage this nonsense. Wildflowers attract bees. They're a liability. Mr. Jenkins chuckled from his porch. Karen, everything's a liability to you. Laughter rippled across the group. Small, but real. Karen's face burned red. DeMarco lifted a hand for silence. All right. I'm going to call the county clerk now to verify property records. Officer Brooks, take Tyler back to the cruiser until we figure out what to do with him. Officer Hale, get statements from neighbors. Karen started to protest, but DeMarco gave her a look so sharp she swallowed the words. Brooks guided Tyler gently toward the cruiser. The boy's face was pale, his shoulders slumped. I caught his eye for a second. There was fear there. Yes, but also shame. As Hale moved among the neighbors, taking their quiet statements, I stood on the gravel, Baxter leaning against my leg. I stroked his floppy ear, my heartbeat slowly finding a rhythm again. But even as calm tried to return, I couldn't shake the feeling. Something about tonight felt bigger than just a broken dock, a lock, or a loud neighbor. This wasn't just about rules. It was about power. And power, when threatened, always fights back. The lake breeze shifted, carrying the scent of wet pine. In the distance, thunder rolled, low, rumbling, a promise of the storm creeping closer. Sergeant DeMarco pulled out his phone, stepping toward his cruiser to make the call. Karen's eyes followed him, her lips pressed into a hard line. She looked at me one last time, and in that look I saw something that made my stomach twist. It wasn't just anger, it wasn't just pride. It was a promise. This fight was far from over. And just as the sergeant lifted his phone to his ear, a sharp cry rang out from the far end of the lake path. Help! Somebody! Help! Every head snapped toward the sound. A neighbor's flashlight beam swung wildly across the trees. A shadowy figure stumbled out from the path, clutching their arm, blood dripping dark against the pale gravel. The night held its breath again. The cry split through the humid night air like a siren. Every neighbor on the street froze, eyes snapping toward the far end of the lake path. The figure staggered into view, half lit by the swing of a neighbor's flashlight. A young man, probably in his 20s, clutching his forearm with both hands. Blood seeped between his fingers, dripping onto the gravel. His shirt was torn, his face pale with panic. Somebody please, he shouted again, stumbling toward us. He came out of nowhere. Gasps broke from the crowd. Baxter barked fiercely, pulling at his leash. Lily's nightlight glowed faintly from her window, and I silently prayed she stayed asleep. Sergeant DeMarco immediately snapped into action. Brooks, get the med kit from the cruiser. Hale, secure the area. Brooks sprinted, boots crunching on gravel. Hale swung her flashlight toward the dark stretch of the path the man had come from. Sir, she called to him. Sit down right here. Apply pressure to that arm. Don't move. The young man obeyed, collapsing onto the grass, moaning through clenched teeth. Blood was spreading fast. Karen shrieked, clutching her nephew's arm like a shield. What is this? What's happening in our community? First trespassers, now attackers. This is all because of him. She pointed at me again, her finger trembling with rage. I held up both hands, my voice steady even though my chest pounded. Karen, I don't know this man. I've never seen him before. The neighbors were whispering furiously now, fear and suspicion rolling through them like waves. DeMarco crouched by the injured man. Who did this to you? Who's out there? The man's voice was weak, his breath shallow. I was walking by the lake, cutting through the path. Someone jumped out, big guy, hoodie, tried to grab my bag. I fought back. He had a knife, caught me here. He groaned, pressing harder on the wound. A collective gasp rippled. Karen latched onto it like a hawk diving for prey. See? Criminals are running wild here because he doesn't follow rules, because he doesn't respect the HOA. Now strangers think they can just come in and… DeMarco cut her off sharply. Ma'am, enough. This has nothing to do with HOA violations. This is an assault. Right now, our priority is this man's safety. Brooks returned with the medkit, kneeling beside the victim. He wrapped gauze around the bleeding arm, tight and firm. Pressure, he muttered. We'll get an ambulance out here. He radioed dispatch, his voice clipped and professional. I looked down the path, heart hammering. Dark trees stood tall, shadows thick between them. If there really had been an attacker, he could still be out there, watching, waiting. A shiver slid down my spine. The neighbors murmured louder. Nora whispered, "This is too much. First the cops, now blood. What's happening to our lake?" Mike shook his head. Something doesn't add up. And he was right. Because as I watched Brooks secure the bandage, my eyes flicked to the victim's torn shirt. Something about it caught me. The edges weren't jagged like a fresh slice. They were frayed, like they'd been ripped long ago. And then the way he avoided looking at us. The way his gaze darted toward Karen, then quickly away. A cold suspicion crept over me. I didn't know this young man, but something about the scene didn't smell right. Before I could speak, the injured man groaned louder, swaying like he might faint. DeMarco barked orders again, focusing on him. And in the commotion, Karen leaned close to her nephew Tyler, whispering something sharp and quick in his ear. He nodded, eyes wide. That was when it hit me like lightning. This wasn't random. It was connected. But before I could say a word, red and white lights flashed in the distance, an ambulance tearing down the road toward us, siren wailing. The night was far from over. The ambulance's siren cut through the night like a blade, bouncing off the lake water and echoing into the pine trees. Neighbors scattered to make way as the emergency vehicle pulled onto the gravel bend, its headlights throwing harsh shadows across our stunned little community. The red strobe washed over everything. Karen's twisted expression, Tyler's pale face, the broken dock swaying gently, and the injured stranger clutching his arm like life itself depended on it. I stood frozen near my mailbox, Baxter whining softly by my leg, my hand still gripping his leash like it was the only anchor holding me steady. My heart thumped hard, not just from the shock of what was unfolding, but from the nagging suspicion burrowing deep into my gut. Something about this didn't add up. Something about this attack was off. The EMTs jumped out, one carrying a stretcher, another with a medical bag. They rushed to the bleeding man, his head lolled back, eyes fluttering dramatically, groaning louder now as if on cue. "Sir, stay with us," one EMT said, pressing fresh gauze against his arm. "What's your name?" The man winced, his voice faint. Daniel. Karen rushed forward, waving her arms like she was directing traffic. "Please help him. This poor boy was attacked on our lake path because this man," she jabbed a shaking finger at me again, "brought chaos to our neighborhood. This is what happens when people refuse to follow rules." Sergeant DeMarco's eyes narrowed at her. His patience was thinning, I could tell. "Ma'am, you're 2 seconds away from being asked to step back. Let the professionals do their job." But Karen didn't step back. She pressed on, her voice louder, aimed at the neighbors who had gathered closer to the commotion. "Do you all see what's happening? First he builds without permission, then he trespasses, then he threatens our safety. And now strangers are bleeding out on our property." The crowd buzzed. Fear mixed with doubt. I could feel the neighbors shifting, some leaning toward her words, others shaking their heads. I forced myself to step forward, my voice calm but firm. "With respect, Karen, I didn't attack this man. I've never seen him before tonight. And if you'd stop shouting long enough to listen, you'd realize there's something strange about his story." All eyes flicked toward me. The EMTs worked quickly, lifting Daniel onto the stretcher. His arm was wrapped tightly, blood mostly under control now. "What do you mean strange?" Mike called out, his voice carrying from his porch. I swallowed, steadying my words. "Look at his shirt. The tear isn't clean. It looks old. And the way he groaned louder the moment the ambulance arrived. It doesn't feel real." And I noticed something else. When Sergeant DeMarco asked him what happened, he glanced straight at Karen before answering. The murmurs swelled. Neighbors looked between Karen and the stretcher, their suspicion growing. Karen's face flushed red, her voice sharp with fury. "How dare you accuse me of being involved in this? You think I'd orchestrate an attack? That's insane." DeMarco raised a hand, silencing us both. His eyes, though, lingered on Karen for just a second too long. "Sir," he said to me, "speculation won't help right now. What we know is someone's injured. We'll investigate further once he's stable." But I saw it, the flicker of doubt in his eyes. He'd noticed, too. The EMTs wheeled Daniel toward the ambulance. Karen rushed after them, her words tumbling over each other in desperation. "I'll go with him. I need to make sure he's okay. He's part of our community." But that was a lie. I knew every neighbor on this stretch of the lake, and I'd never seen Daniel before tonight. "No, ma'am," one EMT said, blocking her path. "Only immediate family." Karen froze, her jaw clenching. Immediate family. That small detail pricked my mind. If Daniel wasn't part of the HOA, what was he doing here? And why was Karen suddenly so protective? The ambulance doors slammed shut. The siren wailed again, fading as it carried Daniel into the night. The crowd lingered, buzzing with unease. DeMarco turned to us all. "All right, listen up. We're treating this as an assault until proven otherwise. We'll be canvassing the area, taking statements, and reviewing any security cameras. Anyone with footage of the lake path tonight, get it ready. Several neighbors nodded. I thought of the small camera I'd installed above my porch, the one facing the path. My pulse quickened. If Daniel's story was fake, maybe the camera had caught something. Karen, though, wasn't done. She stepped into the center of the group, her voice booming. This is exactly why we need strict HOA control. Look at tonight. Danger, disorder, strangers running wild. And why? Because he refuses to follow our rules. He's the cancer rotting this community from the inside. Her words hit hard, and I saw some neighbors shift uncomfortably. Fear has a way of making people cling to the loudest voice, even when it's wrong. I couldn't let her twist this. Not again. Karen, I said, my voice louder now, steady as I could make it. The truth always comes out, and when it does, we'll see who's really been trespassing, lying, and endangering this neighborhood. The neighbors gasped, their eyes darting between us like they were watching a tennis match. Karen sneered, her face twisted with rage. Big words for a man who's about to lose everything. The tension was so thick it could have been cut with the very bolt cutters Tyler had dropped earlier. Then, before anyone could speak, a sharp metallic clang echoed from the lake path again. Every flashlight swung in unison toward the darkness. And there, half hidden by the trees, was another shadowy figure. Not Daniel, someone else. Tall, broad-shouldered, standing perfectly still at the edge of the path, watching us. The neighbors gasped again, and then the figure slowly stepped backward into the trees, vanishing into the night. Who was that? Nora cried out, clutching her robe tighter. DeMarco's radio crackled as he barked, Hale! Brooks! Fan out! Now! The officers sprinted toward the path, flashlights slicing through the dark. Baxter barked wildly, straining against his leash. My pulse raced, my chest tight, because if Daniel's attack had been staged, then who was this new figure? And why were they watching us from the shadows? The storm was only getting bigger. The darkness swallowed the figure almost instantly, like the trees themselves had pulled him into their shadows. The neighbors erupted in panicked chatter, voices overlapping, hands pointing toward the path where the stranger had vanished. Baxter barked furiously, his hackles raised, and I could feel his tension vibrating through the leash. Sergeant DeMarco's voice thundered above the chaos. Everyone get back to your homes, now. Lock your doors, turn on your lights. Officers Brooks and Hale are sweeping the path. The crowd hesitated. Fear held them rooted in place. No one wanted to move first. It was as if stepping away meant missing something. Or worse, being left vulnerable. Karen, of course, seized the moment. She threw her arms wide, addressing the neighbors like a preacher at a pulpit. Do you see what's happening? This is exactly what I've been warning about. Strangers lurking in the shadows, attacking our residents, endangering our children. Her voice cracked on the last word, and she clutched Tyler to her side as though she'd never let him go again. But I couldn't stay quiet. My voice cut through her performance. Karen, stop trying to spin this. Whoever that was, it has nothing to do with me painting my porch or planting flowers with my daughter. You called the police on me for trespassing, and now look where we are. Blood, broken locks, and shadows in the trees. Some neighbors nodded. Others still looked uncertain, torn between fear and reason. DeMarco turned on Karen, his patience gone. Ma'am, not another word. This isn't an HOA meeting. This is a crime scene. Her mouth snapped shut, though her glare at me promised she wasn't finished. The night pressed heavier. The smell of rain rode the breeze, thick and electric. The thunder that had rolled earlier now cracked sharper, closer. A storm was coming. Not just in the sky, but in the neighborhood too. I swallowed hard, scanning the path. The trees swayed gently, but nothing moved within them. Whoever had been there was gone. Brooks's voice came over the radio. Sergeant, we found fresh footprints along the path. Big, heavy boots, headed toward the back trail that leads out to Route 9. No sign of the suspect yet. Copy that, DeMarco replied. His jaw tightened, eyes scanning the faces around him. We've got more going on here than a property dispute. Until further notice, this area is under active investigation. A ripple of unease swept through the neighbors. Active investigation meant trouble. It meant cops hanging around. It meant headlines. Nora clutched her robe tighter. My kids sleep right by the back window that faces the path, she whispered. What if he comes back? DeMarco's voice softened, firm, but reassuring. We'll have patrol cars rotating through the night. No one here is alone. But I need everyone calm. Panic helps no one. Karen muttered loud enough for all to hear. Calm? When we've got criminals bleeding on our lawns and others watching us from the woods? You've let this whole place fall apart. DeMarco didn't even look at her this time. He turned to me instead. "Sir, you mentioned having cameras?" I nodded. One above my porch pointed toward the path. "I can pull up the footage." "Good. That might tell us who we're dealing with. Grab it. Officer Hale will assist." As Hale followed me toward my cabin, the neighbors slowly began to scatter, retreating to their porches and doorways, some still murmuring, others just silent and afraid. Karen stood her ground, though, her eyes locked on me, burning with a mixture of fury and something else I couldn't place. Fear, maybe. Inside my cabin, the air felt warmer, safer, though my hands trembled slightly as I booted up the small monitor connected to the camera system. Hale stood behind me, her flashlight clipped to her belt now, her presence steady and professional. The footage flickered on, black and white images of the lake path glowing faintly under the moonlight. I scrolled back through the timeline, my pulse pounding with every frame. And then I saw it. First Daniel, stumbling into view from the far end of the path, clutching his arm even before he reached the gravel. Then, a few seconds later, another figure appeared in the frame. Not the hooded runner. Karen. She was standing halfway down the path, looking both ways before motioning Daniel forward. Her hand made a sharp gesture, as if signaling him when to go. He nodded, then started staggering toward the houses. I froze, my stomach twisting. Hale leaned closer. "Replay that." I did. Same thing. Daniel waiting in the shadows, Karen signaling him forward, his dramatic stumble and clutching his arm before he even reached us. Hale let out a low whistle. That doesn't look good for her. I exhaled, my mind racing. So she staged it. She staged the whole thing, to make me look like a threat. The weight of it settled on me like a stone. Karen hadn't just been making noise. She'd orchestrated a performance, pulling strings in the dark to control the narrative, to sway the neighbors against me. But why? What did she stand to gain from pushing me out so badly she'd fake an assault? Before I could form the thought fully, a sharp crack of thunder rattled the windows. Rain began to patter against the roof. The storm had arrived. Hale's radio crackled. "Brooks to Hale. Suspect's footprints lead right to the highway. We lost him." She keyed her mic. "Copy. We're reviewing new evidence here. Might want the sergeant to see this." And as I stared at the frozen image of Karen on my monitor, her hand raised in that unmistakable gesture, I realized the storm outside was nothing compared to the one building in this neighborhood. Because if Karen had staged Daniel's attack, then who exactly was the shadowy figure watching us from the trees? And what did he want? The questions clawed at me, heavy and urgent, as Hale turned toward me and said, "We'll need to show this to the sergeant, but brace yourself, this is going to change everything." The rain came down in sheets, slapping against the cabin roof and turning the gravel drive into a patchwork of puddles. Lightning flickered, splitting the sky in jagged lines, and every time it did, Baxter growled low in his throat as though the storm itself were an intruder. Officer Hale and I hurried back toward the cruisers, the flash drive clutched tightly in her hand. Water streaked down her face, plastering her hair against her neck, but her eyes were sharp, focused. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains now, their porch lights glowing like weak candles in the storm. The earlier crowd had scattered, but I knew they were still watching. Everyone was. Fear had turned Lake Silverpine into a stage, and Karen, whether she knew it or not, was no longer the star. When we reached Sergeant DeMarco, he was standing beneath an umbrella near his cruiser, radio pressed to his ear. His brow furrowed deeper as Hale handed him the flash drive. "We've got footage," she said. "It doesn't match the story." DeMarco's eyes locked on mine. "What exactly am I about to see?" I exhaled. Proof that Karen staged the attack. His jaw clenched, but he didn't say a word. He slipped the flash drive into the laptop mounted inside the cruiser. Hale and I leaned close, water dripping off our clothes as the footage played on the small screen. There it was again. Daniel hiding in the shadows. Karen's sharp hand signal, the exaggerated stumble forward. When the clip ended, silence stretched between us, broken only by the hiss of rain on the cruiser's hood. Finally, DeMarco spoke. "Well, that changes the game." Hale crossed her arms. "It's fraud, false report, obstruction, at minimum." I swallowed hard. And an attempt to frame me. DeMarco's gaze shifted toward Karen, who still stood defiantly with Tyler under a neighbor's porch awning. Her arms were crossed tight, her chin raised, but there was a stiffness in her shoulders now. She knew the walls were closing in. DeMarco shut the laptop. "We'll confront her, but I want to do it carefully. If she's bold enough to stage this, she's bold enough to escalate." The words made my stomach twist. Escalate. The night already felt stretched to its breaking point. Lightning cracked again, and in that split second of white light, I saw something at the edge of the tree line behind Karen. Movement. A shadow, tall, broad-shouldered, watching. My heart slammed in my chest. "There, by the trees," I shouted, pointing. Everyone turned, but by the time the officers swung their flashlights, the figure was gone, swallowed by the storm. Karen's face went pale. For the first time all night, her confidence wavered. She glanced over her shoulder at the trees, then back at me, her eyes wide. DeMarco's radio crackled again. Brooks's voice came through, strained by static. "Sarge, we've got tire tracks on Route 9, big ones. Whoever it was, he didn't run off on foot. He had a ride." DeMarco cursed under his breath. "Copy that. Hold the scene." He turned to Karen. Rain dripped off his hat brim as his voice hardened. "Ma'am, we need to talk. Now." Karen laughed. Too loud. Too forced. "Talk? About what? That blurry little video you think proves something? I'm protecting this community. You should be thanking me." "Protecting?" I snapped before I could stop myself. "You staged an attack, Karen. You dragged a stranger into our neighborhood, lied to the police, and tried to ruin me. That's not protection. It's manipulation." Gasps came from nearby porches. Even in the storm, neighbors had cracked their doors open, listening, watching. DeMarco stepped closer to her. "Ma'am, I'm going to ask you straight. Did you coordinate with this Daniel to fake an assault?" Karen's face tightened. For a heartbeat, she said nothing. Tyler shifted nervously beside her, his lips parting like he wanted to speak. "Answer the question," DeMarco pressed. Karen's voice finally came, sharp and trembling. "I did what I had to do. Do you understand? This place is slipping. Standards are falling. Weeds, paint colors, junk mailboxes. It's all decay. If we don't fight for order, we lose everything." The words spilled out like a confession, her chest heaving, her eyes wild. But then, she leaned forward, her voice dropping into something darker. "And don't think for a second I'm the only one who feels this way." The neighbors murmured louder now, some shocked, others shifting uncomfortably. DeMarco straightened. "That's enough. Ma'am, you're coming with us for questioning." Karen's face twisted. "You can't do this. I am this community. You'll regret—" Her voice cut off when another sound shattered the storm. The roar of an engine. Every head snapped toward Route 9. Headlights blazed briefly through the trees before vanishing again. And then a distant, echoing bang. A gunshot. The neighbors screamed. Hale's hand went to her weapon. Baxter barked, lunging against the leash. My chest seized with fear. The shadow in the trees wasn't gone. He wasn't done. And this time, he was armed. The gunshot rolled across the lake like thunder that didn't belong to the storm. It wasn't the sharp crack of a firework or the hollow pop of a backfiring engine. This was heavier, realer, metal meeting fire, a sound that every ear recognized even if they'd never heard it up close before. Neighbors screamed and ducked behind porch railings. Someone shouted for their kids. Doors slammed shut. Porch lights flickered on in panicked succession down the bend of Cedar Lane like a row of dominoes toppling. Baxter lunged so hard against his leash that my arm jerked forward. His bark was wild, frantic, his body stiff with protective fury. My pulse thundered in my ears. "Down! Everyone down!" Sergeant DeMarco roared, his voice carrying through the storm. He crouched low, drawing his sidearm in one fluid motion. Officer Hale followed suit, her eyes scanning the trees with sharp precision, flashlight beams slicing through sheets of rain. Karen shrieked and pulled Tyler against her chest, crouching beneath the neighbor's porch awning. For the first time that night, she looked less like a commander of the crowd, and more like a frightened woman with nothing left to control. DeMarco's radio crackled through the storm. Brooks's voice came fast, urgent. "Sarge, confirm. I just heard a shot from Route 9. You good?" "We're good," DeMarco barked back. "Sweep the road, lock it down, don't let anyone leave." Karen's face was ghost pale, her lips trembling. She turned her head toward me, and in her eyes, I saw something I hadn't seen all night. Fear of something bigger than her. Hale crouched near the fence line, scanning the dark. No muzzle flash. Shooters moved. The storm intensified, rain coming in sideways. My shirt clung to my skin. Water dripped into my eyes, but I didn't blink. My gaze was locked on the trees. Somewhere in there was a man who wanted us afraid, and it was working. DeMarco motioned for Hale to cover the east side of the path. He leaned closer to me. "Sir, get your daughter inside. Lock every door, every window. Don't come out until I say so." I nodded, gripping Baxter's collar with a trembling hand. My mind screamed Lily's name. I could see her nightlight glowing faintly through her window, unaware of the chaos outside. My throat tightened, but then, movement. At the far edge of the path near the splintered dock, a shape darted between the trees, not running, gliding fast, purposeful, the same tall, broad frame we'd seen earlier. "Contact!" Hale shouted, her flashlight beam snapping toward the motion. For half a heartbeat the figure paused, caught in the light, His hood clung to his head, soaked from the rain. His face was shadowed, but his stance was solid, threatening. And then, another crack. This time, closer. The dock shuddered as a bullet slammed into one of its posts. Wood splintered, a sharp pop echoing. The neighbors screamed again, doors slamming tighter, lights flicking off this time as fear swallowed bravery. DeMarco shouted, "Shots fired! Officer needs backup at Cedar Bend, Lake Silver Pine." His voice was steady, unflinching, even as the storm raged and bullets flew. I ducked instinctively, dragging Baxter down with me. My heart hammered. This wasn't just about HOA disputes anymore. This wasn't about Karen's fake assault or staged theatrics. This was war. Hale's gun was drawn now, her eyes fierce. "He's armed, Sarge. We need eyes on the ridge." Karen wailed, "This is your fault." She pointed at me, her hand trembling, her voice breaking. "You brought him here." Her words stung, but even she didn't believe them fully. Not this time. Her eyes betrayed her. They were fixed on the trees, wide with terror. Because deep down, she knew what I knew. Whoever this shadow was, he wasn't here for me. He was here for all of us. DeMarco's voice cut through the storm again, iron strong. "Everyone inside now. No arguments. If you stay out here, you're a target." The neighbors obeyed this time, bolting for their doors, slamming locks into place. Nora dragged her kids by the hand. Jenkins limped quickly up his steps, muttering prayers under his breath. Karen, though, didn't move. She clutched Tyler like a shield, her eyes darting between the officers and the trees. "You don't understand," she whispered, rain running down her cheeks like tears. "If he's here, it means—" Her voice cracked, the rest of the words swallowed by thunder. But it was enough. Enough to confirm my suspicion. Karen knew who he was. Lightning flashed, and in that brief illumination, I saw the figure retreating farther into the woods. He wasn't running scared. He was retreating with purpose, like he had more time, more plans. DeMarco cursed under his breath. "He's baiting us." Another thunderclap shook the sky, louder, angrier. The rain was relentless now, hammering the lake and roads, making everything slick and uncertain. And in the chaos, one truth settled heavy in my chest. We weren't just dealing with an HOA tyrant anymore. We were caught in something deeper, something darker, something that reached beyond property lines and paint colors. And Karen? Karen had just confirmed she was hiding a secret big enough to bring a gunman to our quiet lakeside homes. The storm raged harder, wind whipping through the trees until they bent and groaned like weary giants. The rain fell in sheets so thick it was hard to see more than a few feet ahead. Yet through the blur of water, I could still feel his presence. Whoever that shadowy figure was, he hadn't gone far. He was circling us, watching. DeMarco motioned sharply for me to move. "Inside, now." His voice was steel. I hesitated, my eyes still locked on Karen. She was pale, her wet hair plastered against her cheeks, clinging to Tyler so tightly he could hardly breathe. Her earlier fire had drained away, leaving something brittle behind. Fear, yes, but also guilt. "What did you mean back there?" I demanded, my voice rising over the roar of the storm. "You said if he's here it means—" "What, Karen? What does it mean?" Her lips trembled. For once, no words came out. She looked at me, then at DeMarco, then toward the woods again as though the trees themselves were listening. "Talk," DeMarco barked. "Now." Karen shook her head violently, tears mixing with rain. "You don't understand. You don't understand what's at stake. If I say it out loud, we're all in danger." Lightning ripped across the sky, casting her face in stark white light. She looked less like the domineering HOA queen, and more like a trapped woman cornered by her own secrets. Then Tyler, still in her grip, whispered, "It's him, isn't it, Uncle Ray?" Karen froze. DeMarco's eyes snapped toward her. "Uncle Ray? Who the hell is that?" Karen's face crumpled, but it was too late. The name was out. The storm might have drowned a whisper, but not that one. Every ear left outside had heard it. "Raymond Carter," Karen finally said, her voice low, shaking. "My brother. Tyler's uncle. He wasn't supposed to be here." "Wasn't supposed to be here?" Hale echoed sharply, her gun still trained on the trees. "Lady, he just fired a weapon at your neighbors." Karen buried her face in her hands for a moment, then pulled them away with a trembling breath. He's dangerous. That's why I never told anyone. He got out 6 months ago." DeMarco's voice was sharp as broken glass. "Out? Out of where?" Karen's eyes flicked to me, then to the ground. "Prison." The word seemed to hang in the rain like a stone dropped into water. I felt my stomach twist. Suddenly the staged attack, the fake victim, the shouting about community safety. It all looked different. This wasn't just about HOA rules. Karen hadn't been protecting the neighborhood. She'd been hiding something. Prison for what? DeMarco pressed. Karen hesitated too long. Tyler, voice breaking, answered for her. Armed robbery and... He swallowed hard. Assault. The truth slammed into me like a wave. The broad shoulders, the boldness, the gunshot. It all lined up. This wasn't just some random trespasser. It was Karen's brother, someone with a record, someone who clearly wasn't afraid to use violence to make a point. And Karen had known. You've been harboring him, DeMarco said flatly, realization cutting through his tone. Karen shook her head frantically. No, you don't understand. He showed up out of nowhere. I didn't ask for this. But Hale's voice was ice. Then why stage an attack tonight? Why bring that boy, Daniel, into this circus? Karen's eyes darted, panicked. I needed control back. Everything was slipping. The community was turning on me. I thought if I scared them, if I made them rally around me again, it would keep order until Ray left. I didn't know he was still here. Her words tumbled out, broken, desperate. And for the first time, I believed she wasn't lying. Not about this part. But the damage was already done. DeMarco's radio blared with Brooks's voice again. Sarge, we've got movement on Route 9, black SUV parked just beyond the tree line. Engine still hot. Looks like someone's lying low inside. My blood ran cold. That had to be him. DeMarco keyed the mic, his jaw set. Copy, hold position. Do not engage until backup arrives. The rain pounded harder, thunder growling overhead like the sky itself was warning us. Karen collapsed onto the porch step, her face buried in her wet hands. You don't know him. He doesn't stop. If he's here, it's not by accident. He always comes back for something. What's he after? I demanded, my voice sharp. Her shoulders shook. She didn't answer. But Tyler did. His eyes, wide and wet, turned toward me. His voice was barely more than a whisper. The money. My chest tightened. What money? The boy swallowed hard, glancing at his mother. The stash, from the robbery. He hid it, somewhere near the lake. The revelation sucked the air out of me. Suddenly, everything clicked. The trespassing, the staged assault, the figure in the trees. This wasn't about HOA rules. This wasn't about Karen's obsession with control. This was about buried treasure. Raymond Carter hadn't come back for family. He'd come back for the millions he'd hidden years ago. And our quiet lakeside neighborhood was sitting right on top of it. The storm refused to let up. Sheets of rain turned the gravel road into a stream, and thunder clapped so close it rattled the windows of every cabin along Cedar Bend. The truth hung heavy in the air. He wasn't just a trespasser. He wasn't just some shadow. He was Karen's brother, an ex-convict, and he had returned for the money he'd buried long ago. DeMarco's eyes locked on Karen, his voice as sharp as the lightning flashing above us. You knew about this. You knew all along. Karen shook her head violently, water flying from her drenched hair. I didn't. I swear to you, I didn't know he'd come back. I thought the past was buried. I thought it was over. Tyler's voice cracked as he blurted out. But Mom, you told me. You told me Uncle Ray hid something by the lake. And that's why we always had to keep the HOA tight, why no strangers could ever buy here. That's why you hate him. He jerked his chin toward me. Because you don't know what he might find. The neighbors gasped from their porches. Even through the rain, I could see the betrayal spread across their faces like cracks through glass. Karen's mask crumbled. She pressed her trembling hands to her mouth, her body shaking. For once, she didn't have a comeback. DeMarco turned, his voice firm into the radio. All units be advised. Suspect is Raymond Carter, male, late 40s, approximately 6'2", armed and dangerous, previously incarcerated for armed robbery. Possible stash of stolen cash on or near the premises. Do not engage without backup. The radio crackled back. Copy that. The weight of it sank into me. Stolen money. Buried treasure. And Karen's desperate attempts to control the neighborhood suddenly made a sick kind of sense. She hadn't been protecting us. She'd been protecting her secret, guarding her brother's shadow while smothering us under rules and fines. And now he was back to claim what he thought was his. The rain slowed for a moment, a brief lull in the storm, and in that eerie pause, we all heard it. Footsteps, heavy, deliberate, sloshing through mud just beyond the tree line. Every flashlight snapped toward the sound, and then he emerged. Raymond Carter stepped out from the woods like a ghost risen from the earth. He was massive, his soaked hoodie clinging to broad shoulders, his jeans caked in mud. His face, when the lightning lit it, was rugged and cruel, with eyes that glowed with something darker than anger, greed. In his right hand he held a pistol glistening wet in the storm. Karen's scream cut through the night. "Ray, don't!" He ignored her, his gaze sweeping across the group before settling on DeMarco, who stood tall with his weapon drawn. "Lower it," Ray growled, his voice deep, commanding. "I don't want cops. I just want what's mine." DeMarco's stance didn't waver. "You're armed, you fired shots, and you're trespassing. You've already got a list of charges long enough to bury you again. Put the gun down." Ray chuckled, a dark, humorless sound. "You think prison scared me, officer? You think I rotted in there without a plan? I buried that money before you ever put cuffs on me. And now—" He gestured with the pistol toward the lake. "Now I'm here to dig it up." Karen stumbled forward, rain and tears streaking her face. "Ray, please, stop this before it's too late." But Ray's eyes cut to her, sharp as a blade. You kept my secret, didn't you? All these years you kept your little HOA kingdom just so no one would find out." His lip curled. "You're still the same bossy sister, always pretending you're better than me." "Ray, you'll get us all killed," Karen whispered. The tension thickened, every heartbeat pounding like a drum. DeMarco raised his voice, calm but commanding. "Ray, think this through. You fire that gun again and you won't be walking out of here. There's backup on the way and you can't win this." Ray smirked, his grip tightening. "Winning isn't about walking out. It's about not leaving empty-handed." His eyes shifted and landed on me. For a split second I saw recognition in them. Not of who I was, but of where my property sat. Right on the lakefront. Right near the dock. Right near whatever he'd buried. A chill ran through me as realization struck. His stash might be under my land. Ray lifted the pistol, pointing it straight at me. "You, get over here. You're going to help me dig." The neighbors screamed from behind their doors. Baxter barked savagely, pulling at his leash so hard I nearly lost my grip. My chest tightened, every instinct screaming to shield Lily, who was still asleep inside. DeMarco stepped in front of me, weapon raised. "You're not touching him, Ray." The storm crackled with another bolt of lightning illuminating the standoff. The ex-convict with his gun, the sergeant with his badge. Karen, broken and sobbing in the rain. Tyler, trembling like a leaf. And me, the neighbor caught in the middle of secrets buried deeper than roots. For a moment, no one moved. Then Ray's finger twitched on the trigger, and everything exploded at once. "Where are you watching from?"